Cool. I think we're live and all set to go with our PGA DFS live stream here for the RSM Classic. What we'll do here is get you completely prepared for tomorrow's lock and to make all of your lineups for tonight. What we're going to start off with is some weather. We'll talk about a little bit of the key stats I'm looking at for this week. There's been a little bit of a change since the beginning of the week. There's a little bit of some nasty weather coming in, so we'll get into that at the beginning. And then, of course, we'll finish it up with our player poll. We're going to go through the entire player pool, touch on some of the guys I think are some core plays on the slate, as well as some of the people that I'll be fading. So make sure to strap on in. If you guys have any questions at any point, go ahead and feel free to go ahead and put them down in the chat. And like I already mentioned, we're going to go ahead and start off with the weather. So sharing my screen here for you guys. And let's go ahead and look at the weather for tomorrow. So first off, you can see not really much to speak of tomorrow. We're dealing with 2 to 6 mile an hour winds for most of the day, which is essentially nothing for these PGA Tour pros. But you can see overnight between Thursday and Friday starts to kick up a little bit. And then for the Friday slate, absolute madness. We're dealing with 10 to 20 mile an hour winds, which is going to make this course extremely difficult. Or should I say courses? If you guys are new to the channel, if you guys haven't seen the course breakdown already, we're dealing with the Plantation course and the Seaside course. There's a major difference between the two courses, though. And there's a reason why I'm mentioning this now with the weather. The Seaside course, you're dealing with more of a link style. It's exposed to the elements, lots of views of the ocean, that kind of thing. A little bit more flat. Whereas the Plantation course is more of a parkland style. You have tons of woods, pretty dense forest at that. Parts of it are exposed to the bay, not necessarily the ocean coastal part, though, meaning that the winds are much lower there. So even if it's 15 to 20 miles an hour on St. Simon's Island, that's where I'm pulling this weather from. Not going to be nearly as penal as that would typically be. You have a lot of tree cover. You're also dealing with it just being further inland. You're going to have lower lower wind gusts as a result. So that's essentially going to be the key with the weather. So with that in mind, let's talk about the key stats. At the beginning of the week, in general, a lot of our modeling's obviously favored towards the Seaside course, as that's what they're going to be playing for 3 of the rounds here. But in terms of what I'm looking at, it's changed a little bit, right? With these windy conditions, you think that around the greens probably going to be a little bit more important. We're expecting these players to miss just a few more greens than they're typically used to. I also expect a winning score closer to maybe 14, 15 under par rather than 18 to 19. If we take a look at the extended weather forecast, it does look a little bit nasty on Saturday and Sunday. And while I don't want to look at the wind gusts or anything like that, that's going to be wildly inaccurate at this point. It does look like there's going to be some storms. So we can expect there to be at least some patches of weather where it's not going to be advantageous. So birdie or better percentage is going to be scaled back a little bit, adding on around the green. The things that are staying the same, we're looking for players that are good putters, particularly on Bermuda grass. At this golf course, you have relatively large sized greens, carrier sized fairways. I mean, they're extremely hard to miss. 78% of the field last year was hitting their fairways. So really the only defense of this golf course is into the greens. So obviously looking at approach players, but like I said, also those putters that can take advantage of those birdie opportunities. Because even if you're not the most precise player, you're still likely to end up on the putting surface. So making sure that you can avoid 3 putts, making sure they're also capable of going out there and scoring is going to be a big deal. So if I had to go ahead and rank them for this week, number 1 would be shots gained approach. That shouldn't be a surprise to you guys. Number 2 would probably be shots gained putting. Number 3, shots gained around the green, which is just crept its way into the modeling. A lot of that, again, has to do with the weather. What we'll do now is let's hop into the player pool. Going to go ahead and go over some of the foundational plays we have on the slate. And if you guys are wondering what these projections are that you're seeing, these are my Patreon projections that I create myself. I use my custom modeling approach. It's a combination of course fit and recent form to characterize a player, see how they're going to do on a given week. Obviously, you're looking for people that are a good course fit historically, but they're also coming in with good form. So that's the way that I use to encapsulate that. So that's what these rankings are over here to the left. Course fit ranking is going to be the ranking in the field. Same thing for recent form. Recent form is taking a look at the last 20 measured rounds. So there's a reason why I want to talk about this recent form before we get into it. It's going to be slightly misleading. I mean, we had the Mayakoba Championship, Bermuda Championship that didn't have any shots gained metrics. Same thing with the Zozo. So there's some guys in this field that had some great finishes at those events, and that might not be reflected in the recent form rank. So that's why we're going to go through a lot of the players on the slate. I want to make sure I identify some of those guys that might not be getting credit over here in the recent form rank. But that's the type of metric that represents, the last 20 measured rounds. Over here, shots gained putting Bermuda. We have really pure Bermuda putting surfaces this week. So that's definitely something I wanted to take a look at there. And of course, your usual metrics for fantasy, projected points, points per dollar, projected ownership, all of that sort of fun stuff. And over here in the player pool column, F means fade, C means core play, yes means they're in my pool, no means they're not. And just because somebody's a no doesn't mean I hate them this week. It means that there's just something wrong with their game that, I'm not making them a priority to make it into my pool. Playing 150 lineups, you can't play everyone. Just not profitable, or it doesn't make sense to do so. Anyone lifted a blank? Somebody I'm really not sure of as of right now. I don't have my final player pool set as of right this second. So some guys are going to be squeezing into my pool later on tonight. I'm sure some guys are going to end up squeezing out. That's what those blank spaces are for. They're for the people that can either go in or out. So with that being said, let's start at the top of the board. If you guys saw my fades video, I'm not huge on Scotty Scheffler this week. Just far too highly owned, in my opinion. Also not somebody who has the best putter for this type of venue. Webb Simpson, a much better course fit, also coming in with arguably just as good a form, coming in with 7 of 8 made cuts, also coming in with some top finishes as well. If you guys saw my core plays video, I'm all over him. I also bet him outright, so that should be a little bit notable there. I don't typically bet guys outright for the PGA Tour. And anytime I do, it's because I feel I'm extremely convicted about the pick, right? He checks the course fit thing. He also gets the recent form rank there. Coming in with good momentum as well. I think that's a big thing with these guys up top. It's just because they have good course fit, just because they have good recent form. I mean, they're the best players in the world. They should always be coming in with that type of metrics. We also want to make sure they're coming in with good momentum, and that's the case here with Webb Simpson. Why he's one of my favorite plays, quite frankly, on the entire slate. Okay. So let's talk about some of the other guys up top that I do like here, and I'm going to be going to at least a little bit. Louis Oosthuizen is definitely one of them. Checks both boxes that we're looking for: course fit and recent form. Not coming in with the best momentum, would say. Has a couple middling performances of late. About a month ago, he would have been the #1 recent form player in the world, was posting top 5 seemingly every single event. So that's why he's not a core play for me, but I like the course fit. I like the fact that he's good on Bermuda grass and pretty much checks all the boxes we're looking for. Cameron Smith is going to be chalky, but I think it's good chalk at this golf course because we have such large fairways. A lot of these guys that are inaccurate off the tee, like a Cameron Smith, are going to get away with it here a little bit more than they would at other venues. So 22.2% ownership. I like him there. Harris English, just not really going to fit in my pool. He injured his back at the CJ Cup, and we're not necessarily sure that he's completely back from that. I haven't seen many people across the industry referencing that, but the fact that he withdrew with the injury, and it wasn't one of those fake injuries where they say it's their back, that kind of thing. He was squarely in contention and had to pull himself out. So do not like to see that right there. Corey Connors, a great course fit here. Unfortunately, he's garnering a ton of ownership. So I'm going to have right around 25-30%. So just a little bit more than the field. I love the ball striking, obviously very accurate off the tee, which will pay dividends at this golf course. And while he's not going to be able to leverage his distance necessarily, he still has world-class approach play, which again is going to pay dividends potentially, especially in some windy conditions. The windier it is, the better the ball strikers are going to be. Usually the best ball strikers in the world are able to flight their irons better than most. So I like going to Corey Connors a whole lot there. And the main difference between him and Joaquin Niemann is, first off, Corey Connors is a lot more consistent. If you guys take a look at his made cut record, Corey Connors over his last 30 events has only missed 2 cuts, which is absolutely ridiculous. But on top of that, a little bit more of a consistent ball striker. Maybe not quite the same putter, but on Bermuda grass, Connor's actually better than Joaquin Niemann. So this stat right here, this is for over their career, but over the last year, Corey Connors is a positive putter on Bermuda grass. So that's kind of changed throughout his career. Bermuda grass has always been Corey Connors' best surface, but of late, he's actually been a positive in that category. Joaquin Niemann, still a negative on Bermuda grass, even over the last year. So that's really the only difference between the two plays and why I'm siding towards Corey Connors. Because in terms of ball striking, Connors a little bit sharper than Niemann, but it's real close. Let's talk about these 2 core plays down here. I'm going to be mixing in guys like Louis, Cam, same thing with Corey Connors. But down here, Henley and Gooch, they're by far my favorite plays in the entire slate. They're very high value in terms of points per dollar. You guys can see that over here. I mean, Russell Henley, 8.64x. That's just absolutely ridiculous. But with Russell Henley, he gains a ton of strokes off the tee at these short venues. Typically slightly positive off the tee. He's extremely accurate. That's usually how he gets that done. But at courses like where you have the Travelers, TPC River Highlands, YLI, some of the other shorter tracks, even like a Bermuda over the Bermuda Championship, Russell Henley takes those places apart, typically gaining 2 to 3 strokes off the tee. You guys can see I have a couple examples over here. At the Wyndham, he gained over 3 strokes off the tee. The Travelers, 2.38 shots gained off the tee. That's insane for Russell Henley. I mean, this guy's not used to gaining a ton of strokes off the tee. He's one of the best approach players in the world, seemingly year in and year out. As of right now, #1 on the PGA Tour in terms of shots gained approach. And on Bermuda grass, he makes everything. So there's really no hole in his game this week. I mean, even around the green, right? If you're going to say anything about Russell Henley, if you're going to diss him about anything, it would be his around the green play. Not necessarily the best at getting up and down, but this is a resort style course. It's made to be easy. It's made for you and me to get up and down, not these PGA Tour pros. So not really a lot of tough shots around this venue, whether it's at Plantation or at Seaside. Both are resort style courses, and it just plays right into Henley's hands there. Alex Noren, I'm just very average on him. It's a relatively short golf course. It de-emphasizes off the tee play, which all falls into Alex Noren's book. He's a little bit expensive, and he has a few good finishes of late. So if he ends up making my pool, I don't hate it. But I want to talk about Taylor Gooch here. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. If you guys saw my core plays video, you know exactly why I like him. Coming in with some of the best form in the entire world. Also coming in as a very good course fit. Very good at going out there, hitting fairways. Also very good on approach. Good on Bermuda. Really just checks all the things that we're looking for there. Let's go down to a couple of these fades. So Kevin Kisner, this is the one that could burn me the most, but at the same time, the guy is coming in with complete dog shit form. And just because in years past, he's also came in with bad form and performed well, you can't count on that year in and year out. If a guy's not swinging the club well, it's just a change of scenery really going to change all that much. Might be coincidence that he's had those good performances in the past. And in reality, other than last year, his performances at this venue haven't been all that good. I mean, they've been all right. He's $9,200, so you're paying for that course form. You're paying for that course history here. I'm not in on it. He's higher owned than he should be. The form is a lot worse than it's been in years past as well. If you take a look at last year, the whole narrative was that he was coming in with bad form. He was at least gaining on approach in some rounds and gaining and putting in some rounds. The events heading into this, he's losing across the board. So it's just a little bit of a different story this time around for me. You got to pick your spots at some point. And for me, Kevin Kisner is going to be a fade. One of my favorite players on the tour as well. So it's not like I have a personal thing against him or anything like that. Just, I don't see it this week. I think he's a little bit overvalued. Adam Scott at $9,000. It's his first time playing this venue. He lost over 5 strokes on approach last week. That really should tell you everything you need to know. If the guy's swing is off that much, it's not likely that he turns it around in 1 week, particularly in Adam Scott, right? Adam Scott, really consistent ball striker. We're not used to seeing those kind of numbers from him. So it's especially jarring from somebody like an Adam Scott. Keegan Bradley, he's a no for me. He usually misses the cut at these short venues. He really gets a huge advantage from his off the tee play, his ball striking in general. And at these shorter venues, it's more about making your putts, right? It's more about having a high birdie or a better percentage, not necessarily avoiding the penalty that comes with distance. So Keegan Bradley, going to be a fade. Justin Rose, you can play. I don't really have any strong opinion on him. He's a good course fit. I'll give him that. Mckenzie Hughes, everyone and anyone is on Mckenzie Hughes this week. If the guy wins the golf tournament, all of golf Twitter is going to be rich. Let's just say that. Everyone's talking about Mckenzie Hughes playing him. I tried to find a reason to fade him, and I couldn't. So I'm gonna be with the rest of the field. This 7.8% ownership seems low. It's something that's updated throughout the week. It's crept higher and higher and higher. It started right around 5.5%. He should smash that ownership number. I trust the numbers. I'll let the algorithm do its thing. But I think it might be a little bit wrong there with Mckenzie Hughes. Just everyone and anyone's talking about him. So perhaps it's just the informed people, golf, Twitter, for that kind of thing. The public's not going to be on Mckenzie Hughes. We know that much. But we'll have to see tomorrow morning. It'll be an interesting thought experiment. Mito Pereira, he's a fade we got to talk about. His ball striking last week was ridiculously bad. He lost strokes on approach, which is the first time we've seen that from him on the PGA Tour. He gained almost 4 strokes putting, which is completely unsustainable for Mito Pereira. Before that point, was averaging 0.66 negative strokes per round on Bermuda grass. All of a sudden, gaining almost a stroke per round on it. I think that's a little bit more coincidence than it is a sign of things to come. I've seen people in the industry, trying to hop on the Mito Pereira bandwagon. I just think it's a little bit too early to do that. The ball striking last week was a real issue. So even though he's the number 1 course fit ranking, again, that's more of a long-term approach. That's just what we've seen from Mito Pereira for his career. The recent form should tell you everything you need to know. Just a little bit overrated, in my opinion. Let's talk about a few guys further down the board. And I'll remind you guys, if you have any questions, if I passed anybody that you guys want me to do a deeper dive on, go ahead and let me know. I'm more than willing to go back and touch on anyone. Or if you guys are late to the party or anything like that, I can go back and touch on anyone you want me to as well. But Seamus Power here at $8,200. He's an all right course fit. He's used to be a little bit inaccurate off the tee, but has kind of cleaned that up. So I like to see that from the guy. He's also a high birdie or better percentage player. He's from Ireland. You'd expect him to be good in windy conditions. I think he's a good pick right there. Chris Kirk gets credit for being a local guy, yet that's just not true. He's from Athens, Georgia, just 3.5 hours away from the golf course. I don't know why people just equate that you live in Georgia, so you play this golf course all the time. That's like me saying that I go play all the golf courses in Jacksonville all the time. I'm from South Florida. Not the same thing at all. I'm sure he's played the golf course before. I've played Jacksonville golf courses before, but to say it's my home course is a little bit of fool's gold. Pretty sure he has a home there. I think that's why people claim this. But just because he has a vacation home there doesn't mean that he lives there all the time, nor plays the golf course all the time. So he gets this false narrative there, in my opinion. He's nearly 14% owned. There's guys that legitimately live here year long, people like JT Poston, people like Matthew Neesmith, that should actually get a boost from that type of experience. Guy just because he has a vacation home there, that I don't put a ton of stock into that. Same thing with Webb Simpson. He has a vacation home there. Are we talking about him like he knows all the in and outs of this golf course? He's played it well there before. I just think some people are looking too much into that narrative. And the boost, if anything, is minimal, right? So we're not talking about major changes in how I'm looking at players anyways. And at 14% ownership, he would have been a fade regardless. He's just he hasn't been that good of late. Anytime he's made the cut, he's posted like a top 25 finish at the very best, usually in that 30s to 40s range. And that doesn't get it done in GPPs at all. That's hardly getting by. If you want to min cash in a GPP, go ahead, right? But the goal in a GPP is not to min cash. It's to go out there and win first place. He's not really the guy to go ahead and do that for you, unfortunately. Matt Kuchar, he's a high upside play. Really, it's taking a longer term approach with Kuchar, right? If you look at the recent numbers, they're not great. But just a year and a half ago, just 2 years ago, this guy was a prolific winner. He's putting up top fives left and right. His game's not too much different from that point. I mean, the putter's changed. I think that's been the huge thing. He's had to deal with the putter change. They've changed some of the rules, and it's really started to affect Kuchar's game. But he's really tinkered with it. He started to find a lot of momentum with that putter of late. He went through that missed cut stretch for about a year where he was missing about half of his cuts, which for Matt Kuchar is horrible. He's one of the most consistent players in the world, but of late, he's made it about one out of every 4 cuts that he's missing. So he's really cleaned up that side of things, and the putter started to look like old. So this is a golf course that fits his game perfectly. I'm not going to go crazy on him or anything like that, but probably right around 10% ownership for me. Brian Harmon, somebody I'm a little bit more bullish on. So Brian Harmon, a great course fit here. He's played well here in the past. And pretty much anytime we get a short track, Brian Harmon is going to be at the top of my list. Very accurate off the tee, very good with his approach play, solid around the green. The only problem with him is that he's short, right? Short in stature, short off the tee. Just like a lot of guys we have down as a yes this week, this is a great course for them. Charles Howell III, decent course fit, right? He's shown a little bit of late. He really went through a stretch of golf that was rough, but he's made some cuts. His ball striking numbers have been immaculate of late. That's what's really to look at here, and always been a solid putter. So I think you could do a lot worse than him. It's also relatively low owned. Danny Lee, very good of late. You guys saw the last 2 times out, we didn't have shot link data for him. So that's why the recent form rank right here doesn't make much sense. But he has 2 top 10s. He had a top 5 finish at one of those events. So in reality, coming in with some of the best form in the world. So he has 2nd place finish at the Bermuda, 7th place at Mayakoba. Great pick there. Great course fit, relatively short off the tee, great with his approach, good on Bermuda grass, good putter in general. Don't think you can go wrong with Danny Lee, especially because he's a little bit underlooked there. NSN says, watch out for my guy, JT Poston. Yeah, so absolutely. We'll get to him in a little bit, but great course fit. And he's from the area. He's actually from Sea Island, which a lot of people can't say. There's a lot of fake locals out there that people are talking about. Let's move on though. Let's get down to that 6K range very soon, which I have a lot of gems down low, which I like this week, which is it's going to make our lineup construction a little bit interesting. I'm probably going to play at least 1 or 2 guys in the 6K range in most of my lineups this week, which means I'm going to try and jam in probably 2 of those guys up top. I think that's going to be a relatively contrarian build as well. A lot of people are in love with those guys in the 9K range. A lot of people are in love with the 8K range as well, which I like the plays, right? You saw there was a lot of yeses up there, but trying to be a little bit contrarian with our build can almost be more effective than having the right fades. So let's talk about Patrick Rogers, though. He's not typically the best player on these shorter tracks. He kind of bucked that trend at the Bermuda Championship, got out to that really hot start, kind of faltered down the stretch. So I think a lot of people are going to rush to the window to play Patrick Rogers. I think even the 7.4% ownership projection right there might be a little bit low, just because I do expect people to rush to the window, box score watching, seeing how he did at Bermuda, relatively short track as well. Think that he's going to go ahead and reproduce that, but we take a broader approach. Usually at these events, Travelers Championship, Charles Schwab Challenge, a lot of the shorter events on tour, he misses more than half of his cuts. So not really what you want to see there. Jason Day, he's burning money if you use him. He looked good for like 12 holes last week and then fell off the train. And that was a really good course fit for him, right? And I said that last week when I mentioned that he's pretty much burning money. He's a really bad course fit here. So you don't really want to go there. Kevin Streelman, he's really hasn't looked like himself of late. Has kind of fallen off. I don't really like going there. I'm going to wait to see something from him until we go back to him. Matt Wallace looked really good with his ball striking. He's relatively low owned. Not really much risk there going to him. He's going to be my pull a little bit. Luke List. So this is another guy I think he's a little bit under projected in terms of ownership. My algorithm a little bit lower on him than I think the public is. He gained over 13 strokes tee to green last week, but that is a completely different track. That is a track where distance is definitely rewarded. It's also a track where you're dealing with relatively flat greens. Here at the RSM Classic, while they're massive greens, they're relatively easy to hit. They are a little bit harder to read. So Luke List, and you saw him lose a bunch of strokes putting last week anyways at Memorial Park. That's why he ended up not winning the golf tournament. So to expect him to come out to a birdie fest where you have to have the putter and perform, I do not think that we should be expecting that to happen. Robert Streb, he always shows up at RSM. Go ahead and play him. Troy Merritt was in my values plays video. Definitely a good play here. His off the tee accuracy is usually an issue, but at this track with such large fairways, shouldn't be as much of an issue as it usually is. Let's talk about Brandon Grace now. So Brandon Grace has an interesting situation going on, and I can't speculate too much about it, but he has some type of rare illness going on right now, where it's like causing inflammation in his ribs, causing a lot of pain. It's why he didn't play last week. And he posted on his Twitter today. He's like, sorry, it was a couple days ago. Sorry. Was resting last week to try and feel better for this week. And he used the word to try and feel better. That is scary. Anytime you're playing DFS in a sport where, if it locks and then he withdraws 5 minutes later, there's nothing you can do. In other sports, there's at least late swap, right? Where you can swap off of these guys. That's not an option in golf. And anytime we get this type of scenario, unless it's like a John Rahm at the Fortinet Championship, John Rahm or Brandon Grace, much different players. I'm going to be fading that type of situation. And for what it was worth, at that golf tournament with John Rahm, and ended up playing the golf tournament, but ended up sucking. We ended up still winning that GPP that week. So that was an experience off on its own. Let's keep going on with this, though. So first off, Emiliano Grillo at $7,400. He's a good course fit, or he's going to keep the ball in play. He's good with his approach. If it gets really windy, he's definitely going to be even more in play. So I like going there. Hayden Buckley looks great for the metrics. Unfortunately, his sample size is tiny. So we have no idea whether it's just a little bit of an aberration or a trend of things to come. But I'm going to be playing him in hopes that it's a trend of things to come. Try to get on him a little bit earlier than most. Henrik Norlander, somebody I never play. He's just not very good in fantasy scoring, and he's a loser in terms of fantasy points gained. Also somebody who lacks the kind of skill set you need here, right? He's a shorter hitter, which sure, he's at least going to get away with that. But you'd hope he'd be a good putter, and he's not a good putter. So doesn't really have the skill set we're looking for. Even if he is a shorter hitter, being a shorter hitter isn't helping you here. It's just that a lot of the short hitters tend to be better putters, also tend to be better with their around the green play. That's not the case with Henrik Norlander. Adam Hadman, great putter, great approach player. Can't go wrong there. Keith Mitchell, an actual local who actually lives on St. Simon's Island. Unlike a lot of these other fake news people out there saying that they're from St. Simon's Island, they're not. If you're from Georgia, it doesn't immediately make you from St. Simon's Island. Keith Mitchell actually lives on the island. Tyler Duncan, same thing, but I'm not playing him. He just had that one good week a few weeks ago. I'm not going to look too much into that. Alex Smalley, there's this subset of golf Twitter that's in love with Alex Smalley that just like looks at him like some type of god or something like that. I don't understand it. His metrics look horrible. Sure, he's a prospect. We've heard his name for quite some time. He hangs out with a lot of really famous golfers. But that's about it, right? It's like in MMA, you have a lot of those up-and-coming MMA guys that like hang out with Khabib or hang out with Conor McGregor. They go out on their first fight and get their ass whooped, right? That's what I see with Alex Smalley. He's like the cool kid on the block. He has all these popular friends, and he goes out there. He's like going to get his ass whooped like Conor McGregor's little buddy did. So that's just that's my opinion on that. That's the way I see that. It's just too eerie of a situation. It's too eerily similar. Dylan Fratelli, we were on last week. It was a golf course where you needed to be long, where you could get away with being good around the green. This isn't a course where that really plays into that hand, right? It's a golf course where you're trying to have a good putter. He's not a good putter. You're also looking for guys that are more accurate off the tee. He's horrendously inaccurate. And while we have some massive fairways here, the reason why we're looking for accurate drivers is to keep the ball in the fairway. We have some greens that are tiered here. We have a lot of undulation to them. So putting the ball in the fairway makes it easier to control your golf ball. Dylan Fratelli, just not a priority play for me. Probably not going to make my pool. Pankazire, he is a good course fit here. He's one of the guys who actually lives on St. Simon's Island, has played well here in the past. He's a good putter. He's good on Bermuda grass. Pretty much checking all the boxes you're looking for. Brendan Steele, he was in my core plays earlier on the week. He's always good at these short tracks. Same thing with Ches Reavie. Both of these guys more accurate off the tee than anything, but getting it done with their approach play. Somebody who's exclusively on here because of his putting ability is going to be Denny McCarthy. The guy's getting 0.82 shots game putting Bermuda per round. Enough said, right? That's absolutely ridiculous. Gaining nearly 3.5 strokes per tournament on these greens. Scott Piercy, not playing him. Chad Ramey, he's a little bit higher owned than I'd like him to be. I'm playing so many other guys in this range that he's likely not to make my pool just due to opportunity cost. I'd have to invest 15 to 20% into him to get leverage. Whereas the other guys in this range that I like more, I'm investing 10 to 12% to get leverage. A couple guys in this range I like, a couple that made my value plays video, be Harry Higgs and Matt Jones. Matt Jones specifically very good in windy conditions, and as of right now, we are expecting it to be windy. Harry Higgs there at 3.3% ownership, also a good course fit, right? Coming in with relatively good form. That recent form metric is a little bit misleading. A lot of the tournaments that he's played in have not had shot length data. And something I wanted to mention as well, and I meant to mention this at the beginning of the video, is tomorrow, guys, you want people that are playing on the seaside course. And I can't believe I forgot to mention this until now. Something I meant to mention at the beginning of the video. But because of the conditions tomorrow, because it's going to be very easy, we want guys that are playing on seaside. The seaside is a much more exposed golf course. We wanted the wind to be down. So that's why I was mentioning the wind before, right? We were talking about how it'd be more difficult on Friday. You want to make sure that you're being protected by those trees. So anybody that missed that at the beginning, I wanted to make sure I reiterated that here. Seaside is much easier when the wind is down. You're talking about a shot and a half, maybe even 2 shot difference. That's what we've seen in past years at that golf course in terms of splits. So guys like Harry Higgs that are starting on seaside are at an advantage. So make sure when you're building your lineups that you have the PGA Tour app, that kind of thing. You're making sure when you're selecting guys into lineups that you're stacking the guys on the seaside. Obviously, you still want to have guys that are playing on Plantation in your player pool. Webb Simpson is starting on Plantation. It's not like I don't like him this week. It's just there is going to be a little bit of a boost to the guys that start on the easier golf course, because the guys that start on Plantation, when it's easy, they're going to be able to take it low. Sure, that's an advantage there. But when they get to seaside, oh boy, there could be some +5, +6 rounds out there, which in the first 2 days of a golf tournament can mean that you miss the cut. So it might not matter how good you played at Plantation if that happens to you. I think that's the main reason we want to be targeting these guys at seaside. With that being said, Stuart Sink, great pick right here. He's $6,900. I like his shots game putting on Bermuda, particularly over the last few years. Relatively good off the tee, great approach player. Nothing you could really say bad about him there. Matthew Neesmith, he's from the area. He's a great course fit. He's played well at the RBC Heritage. We've seen him play well last week. He was in contention through a few rounds. Obviously ended up faltering down the stretch, but at least he put up a good round there. That was good to see. Down here, we got Rory Sabatini at $6,800. I like going to him because he's a good recent form rank. He's played well internationally, obviously silver medalist, a few top 20 finishes on the PGA Tour. Is being a little bit overlooked just because we haven't seen him play a whole lot. Davis Riley and JJ Spawn, I think it's just a little bit too early. They're just not the best plays for this week, in my opinion. JJ Spawn looked good last week, but he's wildly inconsistent on the PGA Tour. Michael Thompson at $6,800. He's always good at these shorter tracks, relatively short off the tee, good on approach, good at putting on Bermuda grass, at least when you compare him to his other surfaces, 0.44 shots gained per round. That's a very solid number right there. So I like the course fit there. Russell Knox, if we're dealing with some super windy conditions, he's going to be at a huge advantage. Taylor Pendrith, we saw him play well at the Bermuda Championship. Obviously wasn't able to close out the victory, but a good putter on Bermuda grass, so fits that narrative there. Hank Libyota looked a whole lot better last week. He wasn't able to gain off the tee just because it was such a long golf course. And now that we get this 7,000-yard track, he should absolutely be able to gain off the tee with that accuracy. He was great on approach. He was also great on the greens. Gained nearly 7 strokes on the greens. Go ahead. If he goes out and does that this week, he'll be squarely in contention, if not winning. Hudson Swafford, always good at coastal shorter tracks, also good on Bermuda grass. Typically a huge loser on the greens. Typically right around half a stroke lost per round. So significantly better on Bermuda grass. Kiradech, I actually do like a lot here. He's a great putter. He's obviously on Bermuda grass, over a half a stroke gained per round. That's the main reason I like him, to be honest. Same thing with Vincent Whaley. Very good on Bermuda grass, particularly at shorter golf courses. And usually when we have the swing season, when we have events that don't have good shot link data, Vincent Whaley is going off. And this type of event does kind of resemble that type of event, swing season, resort course, relatively easy, relatively short golf course. So why not him this time around? You can see there's a lot of fades in this range. We're not going to go through all of them. McDowell, he had that one good week a few weeks ago. Don't expect that to happen again. Ludwig Adberg, a couple people use European Tour stands are playing him this week. I know nothing about him, so I don't want to tell you not to play him. A lot of people that watch the European Tour are really high on the kid. I'll at least tell you that much. Nick Hardy, I will be playing, though. We do have metrics to support his play. You can see course fit rankings, top 5, top 26 recent form. Very small sample size, we'll give him that, but it's looked good when we've seen him, so he'll be in my pool. Except Straka, if you wanted to take a complete flyer down low, I'm not going to be doing it this week. You can take it on him. Same thing with Lahiri, Burgoon, and Lipsky. They're all decent course fits, just not coming in with the best form, and just guys I like a little bit better, like Davis Thompson, who went to University of Georgia, and his dad works at this golf course. So one of the few people we know has played this golf course. So Davis Thompson, I like going there. Davis Thompson also runs a few PGA Tour events, so he's been around golf his entire life. And because his dad works here, I'm sure he's played this golf course hundreds of times. Let's go down a little bit further now. Brent Snedeker, decent pick, good course fit. Same thing with JT Poston. I know NSN mentioned him before, somebody who's not very good off the tee. He's bad with his accuracy and his distance. But the beauty of this golf course is both of those things do not matter. It's a very short golf course. It has some of the biggest fairways in the entire world. And that's literally the only hole in his game. He's extremely good on the greens, extremely good around the green, and a gainer on approach. So looking essentially, mitigates his worst enemy. So I like going there. Roger Sloan, he was somebody I debated putting in my core plays video, but good course fit here. He was really good towards the end of last year. Just looking for him to return to that type of form. Jim Herman, he was in my value plays video. If you guys saw that, you know that I am high on him this week. Just like somebody like JT Poston, he's horrendous off the tee, but he doesn't have to worry about that this week. Also somebody who's good on approach. He's a top 35 player in approach. He has been for the last 6 years, which is extremely surprising. When I saw that today, I was extremely surprised, but very good on approach. Also a significant gainer on the greens. Typically on Bermuda grasses where he has those good performances, he's wildly inconsistent on the greens. He'll lose 4 strokes on the greens, then gain 5 strokes the next day. Typically his best rounds are on Bermuda though. So like seeing that there. Let's keep going down to Brian Gay. Brian Gay, he's won on these short tracks before. He's great on Bermuda grass. Pretty much you can only roster him at these short Bermuda tracks. And you can roster him this week. The field is going to be there, but so am I. Peter Malnutty, same kind of story, relatively short hitter off the tee. Really good on approach, good in swing season events. I think you could do a whole lot worse than going to him. David Hearn was a late addition to the field, is somebody I will be playing. He's good on Bermuda grass. He's been good on approach over the last few months, and relatively good play on the slate. Dolly Vanderdolf, he made my core plays video. This is a guy who he's checking both boxes in terms of course fit and recent form, but there's a lot of volatility here. He had his PGA Tour card back in 2016, lost it for 5 years. I mean, that should tell you the type of player that he is. I mean, not a very high pedigree player, but in terms of course fit, he fits all the boxes. He's extremely short off the tee. That's why he hasn't been able to get his tour card for quite some time, but he's good on approach. He's been a consistent gainer with his irons for his career. He's been consistently good around the green. He's also been one of the best putters in the field. So if driving is not going to matter this week, if we were to just, make it only 3 shots gained categories and run models, Dolly Vanderdolf would be a top 5 player in the field. And this is the type of event that is. I mean, we've seen winners over the past 7-8 years here of some of the worst drivers of the golf ball. And while I'm not saying Dolly is going to go out and win this golf tournament, I think he has a really good chance to go out and make a cut. And at $6,000, that might be enough to pay off. So I like going to him there. I do think that I bet him to finish top 25. I'll tell you that much. I think he has a legit chance to finish top 25 this week. We'll talk about Parbajan. He's the last guy at the bottom of the board here. He's $6,000. He's a good course fit. He's a much better player than the rest of his peers here. That's the main reason I'm playing him. We don't have a ton of data on him. We know that he's a little bit better on Bermuda grass than he is on other surfaces. So that's good to see. We also know that he's not an elite bomber, right? We know he's a little bit more towards tour average in terms of driving distance, which won't be an issue for this week. So now that we've gone through the player pool, we're going to go ahead and go through a few lineups. So let me go ahead and share my screen once again. Cool. So we're going to go over here, and I'm going to show you guys the type of lineup construction that I was mentioning before. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I do think that trying to take a few studs up top is going to be extremely contrarian. And because there's so many guys in that 6K range that I'm going to be rostering this week, I think it's a good way for me to take some of the chalkier options on the slate and not necessarily going to have to worry about ownership. So for example, I really like Webb Simpson. I really like Cam Smith, right? If I wanted to play them both in a lineup together, that's leaving me with $7,200 remaining per position, which isn't very much, but it's doable. Let me go ahead and show you how we would go ahead and do that. You could still even take somebody from this mid 8K range. Let's go ahead and take somebody like a Brendan Todd. And because Brian Harmon is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate, we'll go ahead and sneak them in there too. That leaves us with $6,400, which let me show you how doable this really is here. It's going to be one of these kind of slates. We could take David Hearn, somebody I love on this slate. We could take Dolly. We could get the whole way down to somebody like a Barjan. We could take, where's my other guy down here? Malnutty, right? We can take any of these guys on here. I'm just going to go ahead and put any of them in here just to show you how this works. You still have $6,700. And there's some solid options up here that we've already talked about before. You know, Michael Thompson, Steven Stallings, Steven Yeager, Taylor Pendrith. All these guys are solid options on this slate. So you can see realistically, we can fit in 2 of these 10K options and not really have to pay down across the board. We can take 2 of those studs. If we would rather take 1 stud and 2 9K options, we can do that too. The pricing is really soft this week, in my opinion. At first, I thought it was a little bit tough to fit in guys into my lineup, but it's not as tough as it really looks. Let's say we wanted to take both of our core plays in that range, Henley, Gooch, and Webb. All we'd have to do is spend a little bit down from Taylor Pendrith. So I just want to go ahead and show you guys that there. Usually when I'm making lineups, when I'm deciding who to put in my pool, I'll sit on this lineup builder page, hand building lineups for 30, 40 minutes, just trying to see the type of combinations I can fit, the type of constructions that I'm fed into, that kind of thing, just to get an idea of where the field's going to go and the type of constructions that I can build with my projections. And for me this week, let me go ahead and show you guys what the chalk build is going to look like, because maybe you guys haven't gone to build lineups or you haven't seen the rest of the industry yet. The chalk build is going to be to live in this 9K range. A lot of people are going to take a Russell Henley. A lot of people are going to try and take a Corey Connors. A lot of people are probably, going to skip this range up here entirely. So let's go ahead and just put a couple of the chalk options in there in the 9K range. A lot of people love this 8K range as well. So, Joel Damon's a little bit of chalky. Actually, let's put the chalk monster in here. $7,800. Wait, where's Mckenzie Hughes? Here he is. Mckenzie Hughes, chalk donkey. And you can see if we use these 4 chalky players, it's going to leave you with $6,300 remaining. But the problem is all of these guys, 22% owned, 20% owned, 19% owned. Mckenzie Hughes, I believe, nearly 10% owned is what I had him at, right? Whereas if we were taking some of these other guys, right, the guys up top, we're dealing with guys that are higher owned. So Webb and Cam, right, 24%, 22% owned. So higher owned than some of those other players, but less owned in terms of a construction. So it's interesting, okay? You can take guys with higher ownership, yet still get a more unique build. So that's something that I would highly recommend you guys look into if that's something that you don't do already with your process. But that's it. That's all we've got here for the live stream. If you guys haven't already liked the video, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. We're going to have showdown content throughout the weekend as well. So tomorrow night for Friday, so on and so forth throughout Sunday. And content going forward. We don't have a PGA Tour event next week. Week off for Thanksgiving, obviously. Week after that, we're going to have the Hero World Challenge, which we will have complete coverage for. We also have the QBE Shootout in December. And I'm not sure why people are saying this is the last PGA Tour event of the year. That is just false. It's just fake news, as they say. There are at least 2 more events, and there are a bunch of European Tour events to cover. So Gonna have plenty of golf covered here on the channel. Gonna have plenty of Patreon projections out there for you guys. So no worry, right? I don't know where this whole narrative that the golf is over for the year is coming from. Just completely false. Look at the schedule. Like, if you're doing golf content, you should probably know the schedule of golf. That's my 2 cents there. Don't want to call anyone out, but have a good one, guys, and see you guys next time.